And then coming up September 24th, we have the Women's Day Retreat. We're going to have a retreat here. Yeah, from 10 to 4. And it's going to be really beautiful. I work with a group of women to put this together, and we have a lot of amazing transformational material for you guys. So we're super excited about that. And then if you would join me in saying our vision statement. We are a loving, joy-filled community honoring the many paths to God as we learn and live the science of mind principles. And so it is. And now, if you just sit back in your chair, get cozy, put your feet on the ground, get grounded, and settle in for the Bradford Centering Song and Reverend Karen's beautiful message.
So just take a deep breath.
I will make a quiet place within my heart. I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my mind. I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my life, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord. I will make a quiet place.
So as we just flow with the resonance of that beautiful language they just spoke into the ether, and just recognize that we are all here, centered in love, whole and one, ready to be and hear and experience what is needed to be and heard and experienced from the words that are going to flow through Reverend Karen, from all the hearts and minds that are attached to this moment, out here and in the ether and in our hearts and out again. And I just know that this is unfolding in the most beautiful, harmonious way that it possibly can, and so it is. My reading is from Let's Get Metaphysical by Mark Reed, who is fastly becoming one of my favorite authors. Eric Butterworth wrote, "Faith is not a vague process of believing in something. It is rather a positive act of turning something on. My faith is a consciousness centered in the universal source. My faith simply tunes into and turns on the divine flow that has always been present." And Mark responds with, "Your faith tunes in and turns on something within you, your God power. Your faith is a strong knowingness. like an energetic and reliable force that you project from your mind into the one mind, the soil of the universe. As Jesus said, with enough faith you could command a mountain to throw itself into the sea. Now that is power, the kind of power that makes creating a few thousand loaves of bread and fish seem like child's play. When all is said and done, our spiritual power is a superpower. And how can we use and demonstrate our God power in our everyday life? Start simple. Right here, right now, say to yourself, I am loved and I am loving. I know that God's substance is awaiting my command, so I plant seeds into it. I know this love that I feel, given freely to me by an infinite loving consciousness, operates through all my affairs. I love and accept others exactly as they are. I am kind and compassionate. My love is felt by others who are drawn to it. The love I express is returned in kind, and I am blessed. I give thanks for this love that is channeled through me and know that it's all good, always and forever. And so it is.
Who knows what tomorrow brings in a world you hard survive?
All I know is the way I feel. When it's real, I keep it alive. The road is long. There are mountains in our way, but we climb a step every day. Love lift us up where we belong, where the eagles cry on a mountain high. Love lift us up where we belong, far from the world we know, where the clear winds blow. Some hang on to used to be, live their lives looking behind.
But all we have is here and now, all our lives out there to find.
The road is long. There are mountains in our way, but we climb a step every day. Love lift us up where we belong, where the eagles cry on a mountain high. Love lift us up where we belong, far from the world we know, where the clear winds blow.
Time goes by, no time to cry. Life is you and I, alive today. Love lift us up where we belong, where the eagles cry on a mountain high. Love lift us up where we belong.
That was impressive. How'd you make that note go for so long? Good morning. Welcome to the West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Karen Rice. I'm the spiritual leader of this community, and it's lovely to see you all. And thank you for the people filling in, for the people that are traveling. It was wonderful. Julia, I kind of like your presence up here. I'm just saying. And thanks for the little plug for volunteers, because you know the one thing we never have enough of and is in the greatest decline since the pandemic is volunteerism. So thanks for plugging that. Karen Fees would love some help in the kitchen. Mary Hines would love some help in the thrift store. And, you know, we always have plenty to do around here. And I'm grateful to some new people who have recently stepped up and expanded our production team. And welcome, Bob. And I see you getting closer and closer to me every week. Because Julie was up here, I wanted to plug Gourmets for God, which is her event, one of her many events. I don't know, Julie, you're getting close to ministry as far as I'm concerned. You're doing almost as much as me here. Gourmet for God is a great fundraiser for the community because it costs the church nothing. You do the work. You use your creative genius to plan something. You can take people. It has to involve food. That's the food and love. Julie always says food and love. You can take people to eat somewhere, and then you host that event, or you can have people to your house. Reverend Clyde did this great sushi thing. Anybody here that was at the big sushi event at Clyde's house one year? Woo, that was fun. And Julie did tarot and tea and tarot. So be creative. Find a way to serve food to other individuals. You could have a movie night at your house and just have popcorn and beverages, and that would qualify. So you think up something creative, then we type them all up and we spread them all out on a bunch of tables in Papke Hall when we're ready to do the silent auction bidding. And you can bid on events you'd like to attend, and all of the income then comes to the center. So it's a great fundraiser for us. It's pure profit, and the minister doesn't have to work very hard. Other people are doing all the work. So I'm happy to see you today. I'm talking, the title of my message is The Upward Push. Very perfect piece of music there. Good reading that just fit nicely with all of that. There was a line in there that just sent chills through me. And CSL has a monthly theme. I don't know that I've ever done this before. I've never shown you, but this is the little magazine that's more than 100 years in publication. And for the month of August, the theme was nature. So I picked up this magazine because we always have these in the bookstore. If you don't subscribe to it already, you can get it here. But nature was the theme for August, and we're just about done. This is the last Sunday in August, and so you can see that my themes build each week, and today is another one where I'm unifying with all the other CSL Centers for Spiritual Living ministers around the world, and I'm doing my variation on what's left to talk about. I did a pretty good job last week. It was like, oh, well, thank you. Oh, good. You can watch the archived recording of it if you missed it. So I always start with an Ernest Holmes quote. Holmes is the sweet person that I really, really appreciate. A great voice for metaphysics and understanding the Bible from a really broad perspective that is inclusive of, doesn't offend too many people. And, I have to say, not too many, because somebody, surely, Bill Maher and all his phobia for the Bible and all that. And religion. I have an atheist son-in-law, I'm just saying. We have interesting conversations. But Ernest Holmes did such a good job in looking at the world's traditions, spiritual traditions, and finding those threads of truth. And so he said these words that I like very much. All sacred literature refers to the divine spark which impregnates everything and is buried in everything. It is there, and it contains within itself the upward push of all of life. Yeah, isn't that great? And that's really what I want to focus on as we wrap up this idea of looking at nature to more broadly understand our own human experience, because everything is evident in nature. Sometimes we're a little too up close and personal with ourselves. We can't see our own stuff or understand this thing called spirituality, and so we dive deeper. And so what a gorgeous thought Holmes says, and kind of a unique way of saying it. All the sacred literature of the world reflects that same deep truth, that same upward push. He says, as I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking from the Torah to the Talmud, from the Gospel to the Gita, from Shakespeare to Whitman. There are just all these spiritual truths, this great eternal wisdom that apparently individuals have bumped into or been inspired by in the living of their own lives, in the way they wrote the story of life. So we're talking today about that story of life, that is that upward push. It is indeed about that divine spark within us, and it's the same spark of divinity that's in all of creation. And as we review that and talk about it again, we see that it gives us some reassurance that there is something that is exquisitely God-given in us as individuals. There's something in us that's always pushing us to show up. There's an urge in us that helps us to participate in life, and then when we hit a bump or we seem to encounter some kind of a upset, we know how to rebound. Isn't it amazing how we can always come back no matter what we've been through, whether it's a financial hardship, whether it's the loss of a loved one, a serious illness. There's something about the way we are created, physically, emotionally, mentally, that we can heal what ails us. And in fact, we can participate in life at higher and higher levels because we learn every time we move through an experience. So there's this I think it's like the art of being human, while you're fully divine, but there's this art of the humanity that shows us there's some tricky work sometimes. Sometimes we are dancing with the shadows of life. Do you ever feel that? That there's, what we come to learn is that the shadows come from the way we relate to the light. The way we understand all of the shadow work, or all of the difficult things in life, or even in our physical life. I mean, have you ever gone out to pick up the paper? I finally was able to stop the paper. Do you know how many months I've been trying to stop the paper since my husband passed? It's like, no, I don't read it. I don't want. It's quite pricey. But I finally, there was no paper on the driveway this morning. I'm taking that as a good sign. But do you ever notice when you go out to pick up the paper or bring your trash cans in or something, and you get to chatting with a neighbor here in the desert? If you're watching and you don't live in the desert, believe us when we tell you, you can't stand in the sun very long before it really is beating down on you and you don't want to be in the sun anymore, and you look for shade. Right? You step into the shade of the house or inside the garage a little bit, just anything to get out of that bright sun. So the shadow isn't all about darkness. We also use it favorably, and we can interpret that in lots of ways as we examine our instincts for living. What we know is that there are dark nights of the soul that we all go through that can be very scary or very unpleasant. And so, unlike choosing to protect ourselves from the sunlight, in those cases, we sort of ride a wave or a period of time until we can participate in removing ourselves from the darkness. And sometimes, like in grief work, it behooves us to stay in the dark and process that inner work that's happening as we're getting accustomed to whatever big change we've just gone through in our lives. So we have an instinct that eventually, just in the same way that a tiny seedling will crack through the crust of the earth and grow toward the light, we have that instinct in us. It's the same instinct. It wants us to, we long to be in that presence of the divine inspiration, the brilliance of the God spark. And that spark, as we're speaking of it today, is implanted at the very core of our being. And so there's something innate. In some ways, we're much like a moth, that goes to your porch light. We are drawn to the light. We crave spiritual uplifting and clarity of understanding in so many ways. This was an interesting thought that followed as I was putting this together. Then I was thinking of, what about those places in the world where people live and the sun disappears for a whole season? I watch those Alaska shows on TV. As you know, I tell you a lot. I like those Alaska shows. I like seeing people live off the land and what's possible. And that does not appeal to me, living somewhere where there's no sun for the whole winter. That does not appeal to me. So even people that live in like Washington State, the Pacific Northwest, even I have a sister in Michigan, and they do talk about how long and dark the winter feels. And we know there's an actual disorder. There's a diagnosis, seasonal affective disorder, I think it is, SAD. SAD. And so we understand that the lack of sunlight in our life causes emotional, depression and emotional upheavals or plateaus. Even the way we understand, this makes me laugh, it's so almost unbelievable to me, but the way we block the vitamin D, even those of us who live in sunny places, and we smear on the sunscreen, and then now you go to the doctor and they say, oh, but you're vitamin D deprived, and we don't know why. It's like, well, because it's like, so what I see is that in life, there's something within us that's seeking the balance of all those things. And we just pay attention to the way all of that impacts us as an individual, because we're all different in the way that happens and unfolds. Ralph Waldo Emerson spoke about the divine spark. In fact, it's possible because Dr. Ernest Holmes was so taken by the work of Emerson, so fed by it. It was one of the first major influences on Ernest Holmes' life. Ralph Waldo Emerson spoke about that divine spark. Listen to these words. The seed and the fruit cannot be severed. For the effect already blooms in the cause, and the end pre-exists in the means, and the fruit is in the seed. So if I have an apple, and I break it open, and I find the seed, and I have one little apple seed in my hand, what I have is more apples, right? You plant the apple, it becomes a tree. Now you have many apples. Hundreds or thousands, I used to be able to quote that. I can't remember all those things anymore. It was really interesting. That seed becomes a lot of apples, plus it's got the seeds of future crops, of fruit that we can't even imagine yet. And that's how life is, The fruit is already in the seed. The mighty oak tree is already in the acorn. The eggs are already in the ovaries. Do you know that? I mean, this really stuns me to think that when a baby girl is born, all the eggs she will use for reproducing are already in her ovaries. You don't get more. Right? You're born with them. And so what that means, another privilege of thinking of womanhood, what we see there is that a woman is born with future life packaged inside of her already. And there's this process of waiting. So, and that ties in beautifully with everything we spoke about last week. You know, there's growth and then there's rest, contraction and expansion, and that's the rhythm of life itself. Here's an interesting note, a little tidbit I picked up from the Science of Mind magazine, actually, and I've often shared with you that Reverend Jesse Jennings is my favorite contributor, and he's a regular contributor to this magazine. He does the questions and answers. They, ask him a question and he'll tell you his idea of the answer. And what's neat about them is that they all apply to the practical wisdom. We really want to know, how do you apply Science of Mind teaching in our life to this circumstance? If you've got something unique, you can write to him, and if it interests him, he will respond to it, and he's really brilliant. So I was reading something he wrote, and he was talking about how every piece of wisdom that's ever been collected from any great thinker that has ever lived on the planet in the history of time, that all of that wisdom comes from somewhere. Think about it. It comes from somewhere, and it comes from one source. And he says, this is where it gets kind of personal. None of our teachers in this movement, none of our teachers came up with their ideas from nowhere. Right? It's like you're reading. What you just read, Miss Fish, was that there's an intelligence that we tap into. There's something bigger and far more intelligent, and all of that wisdom is already embedded everywhere. So we have an inner wisdom, but it's not just in us, it's everywhere present. So then Dr. Jesse goes on to say, where do we get our brilliance from? How come we shine? How come we have days where we're really intelligent? And then there are other days. Let's not talk about that, but there are those other days. And then he says that he answers his own questions and says it's always swirling around. It's these impulses that have been carried within humanity since our origin. I love that. This intelligence swirling around. It's here and it's here, and it's the impulses we carry with us. That's how consciousness advances. That's why we're not who we were, who we used to be in the past. We just continue to, we say consciousness is cumulative. We're always acquiring more wisdom, and that wisdom then has a way of changing how we look at the circumstances going on in our lives. And then when we add the spiritual component, now we have some guidance so that we're not just hanging on to some old beliefs of bad things that have happened, and we're trying to you don't want to live your life so you're just protecting yourself from repeating bad habits. We certainly don't want to repeat bad habits or experiences, but we can do that without holding on to the negativity that happens when we don't heal, when we don't practice forgiveness and all of those things. So we are looking at nature this month. And I love how spirit works, because this is truly a coincidence or a divine synchronicity in my life. I found a new book recommended to me by my sister, actually. My sister who lives in Michigan, actually. Now that, hey, we got a theme going on here. The book is called The Hidden Life of Trees. And my sister is really fun to have conversations with, because she... we're sisters. We only have one sibling. We're it. And she, all her life, my dad she had horses, and she's just a country girl, and we lived in the city, and but my dad would make sure she could board a horse down the street, and she could always have her dreams met. And all of her life, she wanted to own a farm. She wanted to live on a farm, and now she lives on a farm in southern Michigan, and oh my gosh, it's gorgeous, and I love it when she sends me videos of her feeding the chickens and some of the other things we've spoken about in recent weeks. So she tells me, sis, you got to read this book. It's called The Hidden Life of Trees, and the book is written by a college-educated forest person who, what do they call them? I don't know. And he was in charge of making money for the lumber companies, except that he fell in love with the trees. And he had to turn his back on his profession. And he believed that he believes very much, and has written about it in this book, that trees have feelings, that they feel pain, that they're aware of their environment, and that they communicate with each other. I see a lot of agreement. I see a lot of everybody nodding, and it's like, I'm so happy that we see that. Because he shares this story that just intrigues me. Oh, you're going to love this one. Do you like giraffes, Rod? I love giraffes. Rod loves giraffes. I'm going to tell you a story about the giraffes in Africa in the savannas. So it turns out that scientists a while back were studying giraffes. They thought they were going to learn some things about giraffes, and what they learned is a little bit about giraffes, but they learned a whole lot about the acacia trees that the giraffes like to munch on. Right? So what we know now, because of what they determined, is that when the giraffes go to the acacia tree and they're chowing down, the tree doesn't like it. The tree needs what few leaves it has because they're out there in the savannah. And so the tree has an ability to let me see how I worded it here. The tree, when the tree senses the giraffe is nibbling on it, it releases a substance, a toxic substance that is pumped out to the leaves of the tree, and the taste of the leaves turns bitter. Isn't that amazing? And the giraffe will lose interest and move on. Now, here's where it got interesting, because the giraffes would then quit eating after a few minutes. They would quit eating, and the giraffes, instead of going to the very next tree nearby, they would go quite a ways away and munch on another tree for a little while. You know why? Because the tree that was getting nibbled on would release a gas, ethylene, would release a gas that is a scent that the nearby trees could, it's their language. The nearby trees could pick up that scent, and they took it as a crisis. There's a crisis in the neighborhood. We have to do something. And those trees then, Rod, would now start pumping that same toxin into their leaves so that they weren't tasty.
That's amazing.
Is that amazing? I know, I love this stuff. I can't get enough of this stuff. And so they're warning the other trees, that are their relatives. Eventually, the scientists realized that there were some giraffes that they were smart enough to know that all they had to do was go upwind nearby, and they could nibble on a tree if the wind was blowing the other way. So there's an intelligence in the giraffe, and there's an intelligence in the trees. And I love that. There's that upward push of life that is determined to have life continue. So these are great instances where we're learning through nature that upward push. We're learning more about understanding how insistent life is, and trees can communicate, and so much more. So now when I think about that opening quote I read just a few minutes ago, there's a divine spark that impregnates everything. It's buried in everything, and it contains that upward push toward preserving and restoring and reordering, when necessary, life itself. I think there's a lot about life that's not obvious. I think that it's fascinating that things are always working for us. The entire universe, we always say that God, the givingness of God is profound. There's this profuseness about it. And yet we take so much of it for granted, like you have a busy day and a long to-do list, and your lungs are still working, and your heart is still beating, and your blood is still circulating through your body, and your kidneys are still detoxing you, and all of this stuff works. And yes, things like stress and poor eating can inhibit it, but by far, nature is on your side, trying to keep everything moving in a direction that will sustain you beautifully. So we sort of take things for granted. I noticed that when my power was out. Was that last week, I think? Last week when the storm blew through town, and boy, they cleaned up some good messes of trees out there. But how much we take for granted. Like I couldn't have coffee. I couldn't shower. They're just, and you keep going to the light switch, and then I couldn't even charge my phone, and I went, I guess I better go to work. Hopefully there's power at church, and there was, and so I brought all my chargeable devices to here. I came without a shower, and I made coffee, and I was content for a while. But we lost our power for 24 hours. And that's a substantial loss, even things like the AC, which we care about. So we take that stuff for granted until we don't have it. And it's kind of the same with our health, isn't it? We appreciate our health most when we've been through a challenge. Here's a fun quote from a favorite spiritual contributor, author, Alan Cohen. I like him very much. He makes me laugh. He says, "Let a benevolent universe have its way with you." Let that generous, giving universe have its way with you. Open yourself to receive the good that's all around you. And when you do that, you will recognize that there is a bigger plan than you have understood. When we're standing in a place of looking at life through worry or concern or any fear-based negative thinking, life does not look the same. So he says, open yourself to that bigger plan and let the universe pleasure you. So this tells me when things don't look like they're moving in a proper way that I would like them, sometimes how you're tempted to intervene, and especially in other people's lives. Of course, none of us do that, I'm sure. But I want to be quick not to judge. And I want to go quickly to gratitude. Gratitude is a lifesaver. If you feel yourself going in a bad mood and the bad mood seems to be winning, look around quickly for something to be grateful for, even if it's just the way your fingers know how to pick up something. And, look quickly for something to be grateful for. I want to tell you another story that came from the same book, and it's the story that you also may be a little familiar with. Did you know that in Yellowstone Park in the early 1900s, the 1920s, the wolves disappeared? The wolves disappeared in Yellowstone Park, and so we look to understand what we learned from that incident was that it was a big lesson in ecology and in understanding ecosystems, because we didn't have that knowledge in the 1920s. But what happened was the disappearance of the wolf was the result of the pioneers moving west. People were getting, exploring the new land. They were pioneering new lands and new possibilities. And as they began to settle in the Dakotas and Wyoming and Montana, they just started farms and they became ranchers, and now they're living in a place that was wilderness, and there are predators that were eating their livestock, and it became a problem. It was a battle of man against nature. And so the farmers and the ranchers, just really felt it was necessary to destroy the wolves, to get rid of the wolves, and to eliminate the wolf population where they're trying to raise cattle or other livestock. And what they didn't know was that without the wolves, other species were immediately imbalanced, immediately out of whack. The biggest problem was that the elk overbred, and the elk are voracious eaters, and the elk were eating the aspens and the willows and the cottonwoods, and then that just down the chain impacted so much more of nature. So one of the things that happened was that without the aspen, the beavers had no special treats, and so the beavers left the area as well. Without the cottonwoods and the willows that grow near the water. My husband used to always tell me that. He'd say, see that out there in the desert? There's some water source there because those are cottonwoods. That's how you can tell. That's how you can find water. He read all those Louis L'Amour books, so he knew all that, I guess. There you go. That's his history. That's his research. Good old Louis L'Amour. You ever read Louis L'Amour, Rod? Oh, I have a pretty healthy library of Louis L'Amour books at home that I'm probably not going to read. So the cottonwood and the willows grow on the side of the river or the stream banks. When they all went away, there was nothing to protect the stream banks and the flow of the water. Even the flow of the water changed, and so it wreaked havoc for 70 years. And after 70 years, now we have the government starting to get involved in making the parks secure and protecting nature, and they start doing things. But you know what was really interesting here? I didn't know this part at all. But the wolves had instinctively gone from northern Minnesota up through Canada, and they were dropping. It took them 70 years, but they were dropping down back into Montana in that region at the same time as we officially tried to repopulate the wolves to live again where they desired to live. So we learn, I think it's really helpful to remember that we learn from our mistakes. Right? That was, nobody intended that to turn out that way. We just didn't have the knowledge. Consciousness is cumulative. As we know better, we do better. And that is true for all of us. And that is also true for the people that rub you the wrong way in your life. That is also true for, well, let's not even talk about it. But it's true for everybody. Phil Bolsta is a current author, somebody that publishes now, a spiritual author who also tickles me sometimes. He said this: God is an organizing force. Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. See, you got to get God off the cloud. Your God's not big enough if you just confine God to heaven. We got to get God off the cloud. The kingdom of heaven is within, Jesus said. So we want to look at that in a bigger way. God is an organizing force bringing divine order to the universe. That's good. That's good. God is guiding each of us with infinite wisdom and with inexhaustible love. Oh, now that changes everything. That brings me hope for everything and anything that's happening as the consciousness of humanity is going through hell on earth right now. We can see that there's hope because there's an upward push in all of us, and there is a collective upward push that will not allow us to stay thinking way down at these lower levels. So then he goes on to say, you are loved and you are supported no matter how you choose to use your free will. Amen. Yeah. Isn't that fabulous? So let's carry that another step forward, as that is true for us, that is true for our neighbor, and that is true for the people who don't think quite like we are. That we are all loved and we are supported no matter how we choose to use our free will. And what's happening in the world right now is we're figuring out how to reconfigure. We're looking for coherence again. And it's going to take a while. It's not just going to, things that have taken so long to fall apart. 70 years before the instinct in the wolf said, hey, there must be another way we could get back to that place. Something in them knew that they needed to be in that area again. And so we want to support that intelligence in the universe. We want to support it. We want to look for it. We want to believe in it. We want to expect it. And we want to follow our own inner guidance so that we can trust it and that we can have faith in it. I read this week that faith means trusting in advance what will make sense only in reverse. Faith is trusting in advance what's only really going to make sense to us in reverse. You know, we all have 20/20 hindsight, don't we? Don't we all, you just go, oh, yeah, I could have done that instead of this. Or, the ways things become more clear when we have more information. So I like that very much. Trusting in advance, that's what faith is. We don't see it, but we can feel it, we can believe it, we can imagine it. And that is a vital part of this teaching, that we give thanks of whatever it is we are praying for. We give thanks for it before we've even laid our eyes on it, because we understand how spiritual law works. We get that involution, that inner involvement, that feeling level of how amazingly life supports us, as well as meets our needs as we open to that. But we got to open to receive it. So, my friends, when you are praying this week, when you're praying for the good in your own life you desire to experience, when you are praying for the kind of character you desire to exhibit, when you encounter individuals as you leave the house and you do your daily routine, as you are praying for your neighbors and your neighborhood, as you are praying for your loved ones, your family, those precious friends in your life, as you are praying for this world, remember in your prayer to approach it not in that negative way. We're not praying to God, we're not asking God to remove the evil from the world. We are asking God to show us the perfection that is already here. We are asking God to help us recognize that upward push within our own self if we should feel like something's holding us back from experiencing that good. We are affirming, we are putting our demand on spiritual law to reveal to us a greater truth and thereby greater possibilities, not only for our lives, but for this entire planet and for the consciousness of humanity as a whole. Positive change starts with our certainty. So be certain. Spend time this week to know what you know. And if you don't remember, ask somebody who does remember. And then they will remind you, and we can remind each other. We want to be certain about the things that matter. We want to be certain that there is a spiritual principle in life that each and every one of us has access to. It is in us, it is around us, it is the very thing that keeps the universe from spinning out of control, and that's a pretty big job, and it does it well. There is an upward push. There is a divine blueprint within us. Let's use it. That's what I wanted to say today. It's a shame Reverend Clyde isn't here. He would have been proud of my timing. If only I could do it on purpose. Woo, okay. We're going to pray. And we're going to allow ourselves to just sort of be taken in by the movement of the piano keys in the way that music touches us. And for a while, we turn within to the secret place of the Most High. And we just feel the love of God right there at the center of our being. We feel the love of God. And so I'm renewed in this ability to recognize the presence of peace within me. And as this is true for me, I know it is true for everyone within the sound of my voice, that we realize this day, this moment, that there is no place where God is missing or limited or constrained in any way, that the fullness of God is right where we are, right here in this sacred space. And as we speak and share these powerful words of prayer, something inside of us responds. We feel the way in which we are invited to open our hearts, to open our minds even a little more, so that we can be divinely inspired. And so today, we indeed are touched by that upward push. We recognize that there is something in this universe that loves us beyond our imagining. It is greater than our human love, and yet we have this experience of love in humanity so that we might better understand God. For God is love. For everything about Spirit is inexhaustible. And so I know that even now, that amazing grace of God is pouring into this spiritual community, into us as individuals. We open ourselves to be receptive. We stand as vessels to receive this grace, this good, this love, this joy, this new way of looking out on the world and seeing that there is a divine order. There is a divine blueprint. It is in place, and we are all vessels to be used by the hands of God in creating a greater experience of seeing that dynamic whole, of understanding that the wolves and the giraffes and the aspens and the willows all work together for the benefit of the whole. So I say thank you, God. How grateful I am to feel this healing, this movement, this energetic of life that is cleansing us, that is renewing us, that is restoring us to our wholeness, so that indeed we can walk this week with our head held high in the glory of God and just allow Spirit to use us, to have its way with us. And so it is in a spirit of deep, deep gratitude where I feel that movement of life, and it allows me to understand the connection of all a little bit more clearly. I release the words of this prayer into that divine law. I let it be, and together we say, and so it is. Amen. Amen.
Grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. Everywhere I look and every face I see is love reflected, shining back to me. I just give thanks for all these simple things, the joy and peace that gratitude brings. That's why I'm grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have.
So now it's time to express our gratitude and to give our offerings. Just remember that there are boxes in home space and at the back of the sanctuary, at the door at Papke Hall, and towards the back door over there as you exit. Also, if you are viewing online, you can go to the website wvcsl.com, click the donate button, and you can also give there and sign up for recurring deposits, and you don't even have to think about it again. It's really great. So if you can join me in saying our joyful giving affirmation. I live in a consciousness of good, Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God.
Please rise for our last song. Sing that. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. I ain't thinking about my problems. I'm living now. I'm living now. And I ain't gonna worry about the future. I'm living now. I'm living now. Put your hands up if you feel like having a good time. Put your hands up if you're sharing love with all. Raise your cup if you're hopeful for tomorrow. Put your hands up if you're ready to have some fun. Now sing it. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life. Live, oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. One more time. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive.
Nice. Thank you, Bradfords. Don't forget, we're gathering things for teachers. Our Treasures for Teachers donation will be happening. We don't know the date yet, but I called my nieces. I have 2 nieces that are school teachers and said, what do you want? What would you want to find there if we collected for you? And they said bins of any sort, flare pins, and any leftover tape dispensers, staplers, anything at all like that is a real find for teachers who really are paying a lot out of pocket. So be collecting. We'll tell you when to drop it off here. Let's close with an affirmation. Let's do my favorite. Repeat after me. Something wonderful is happening through me right now. It is this thing called life. Life is in my mind. Life is in my body. And life is in all my experiences. I think it. I feel it. I know it. And I accept it. Just the way that it is. And just the way that it is not. Thank you, life. Amen. Have a blessed week, everybody. Move on up.